It's not a secret. Trimming your hair is an integral part of growing natural hair that is healthy. It's an integral part of retaining your natural hair's length and also just maintaining healthy hair in general. There's different methods of trimming our hair. However, I'm going to share with you my one and why I think it's the best method for length retention. Let's go. First things first, you're going to need real, proper, high quality shears. And honestly, if you're in doubt, I'll just go ahead and buy new shears because this tool could be the difference between you retaining your length and stagnation. Like seriously, if your scissors are not the right scissors, if your shears are blunt and old and just not sharp enough, when you do your trim, you're not going to get a clean cut, and therefore you're going to endure even more damage and just unhealthy hair at the ends that does not retain its length. The next thing you want to ensure is that your hair is moisturized. Because of the method that I'm using in this video or just in my routine in general, I cannot afford to have dry hair because I'll actually be low-key finger detangling my hair, particularly at the ends. So you don't want resistance, you don't want rigidity. You want to be able to do this with ease. So make sure your hair is well moisturized. And I like my hair to be dry and lubricated as well. Now you hear a lot of talk here on the internet. Don't trim your hair yourself. Don't trim your hair wet. Trim your hair dry. And more recently, we've seen the drama that's surrounding, curly cuts. Some people say, don't cut your hair in its shrunken state and make sure it's, stretched when you trim it. Look, there's so many methods and so many ways to get the same result. And of course, that is not an absolute statement. There are some methods that are worse than others or not as beneficial as others. However, for me, over the years, with a routine that is focused on healthy hair and also length retention, I have found the search and destroy method to be the best method for me. The search and destroy method of trimming is tedious. Honestly, it's the most tedious way to trim your hair of all other methods, in my opinion. It's pretty much you assessing strand by strand or a couple of strands at a time, looking at the hair and then cutting as required. So it's not just, grouping the hair and then cutting a whole lot because as you guys know, I'm trying to grow my hair out, right? So I don't want to cut unnecessary length. If my hair is healthy, my ends are healthy, I don't want to cut them. And the only way to do that is to actually look pretty much at each individual strand of hair, which is tedious. But the result is that I get to retain as much length as possible for the strands that don't need trims particularly. And that's because I can pick and choose which hair I trim and which one I don't. And like I said, the only way to do that is to actually assess the hair individually, like each strand of hair. Now, yeah, it's tedious. Yeah, it's time consuming. However, I do not stress when it comes to my hair. I do this over a period of time, probably a whole week. I'm just going to be, having a look at the hair and trimming it as I go, twisting it and sort of putting it away until I am done. So if you want to retain the most length, I would encourage you to try this method out. But of course, if you don't have the patience for it, you can try something different, something like trimming in twists, which I sometimes do, or, doing a blowout, then trimming, or whatever else there is out there. However, for length retention, this, in my opinion and in my experience, has been the best to retain as much length as possible. For a lot of people, trims are simply trims, but for me, trims are an opportunity to actually look at my hair. I am forced to assess, to feel, to touch, to look at the hair, to look at the ends in the light and see, is there split ends? Are there mid-shaft splits or single strand knots? So is the hair thinning? It's a real opportunity to quote unquote microscopically really assess my hair, to really see how it's going health wise and to determine where exactly I need to cut.
Yeah.
Now, in case you're wondering, trimming your hair has got so many benefits for your hair. Number one, trimming your hair can help your hair look fuller. So if your ends are really struggling and stringy, sometimes it can make the hair look, not as full, particularly, especially when you're at a particular length, for example, shoulder length or even brush strap length. Now, this is not to say that your ends must be blunt or that you should pursue that if it's not a goal of yours. Of course, we all have different goals for our natural hair. For me, fullness, I'm not really worried. I'm happy with the fullness of my hair as it is, but I know there's some people that, like a certain amount of, aesthetic when it comes to their twist outs, etc. So if you're going for that, trimming your hair might help give you a fuller look to your hair. The second point is that trims can help you avoid breakage. Everyone knows that single strand knots and split ends are the enemy of progress. Okay, if you want your hair to be snagging, if you want your hair to be breaking, particularly at the ends, just keep those single strand knots and keep those really weak split ends, and you will see breakage all the time, and you'll see stagnated length as well. Which brings me to the next point, which is length retention. Guys, I know it sounds counteractive, but of course, if you're gonna cut your hair, you are reducing the length, literally. Okay, so trimming your hair in and of itself shortens your hair, yes. However, because trimming your hair actually eliminates or gets rid of single strand knots and split ends, it actually helps you avoid the breakage, which in turn helps you retain length. So it's almost like an indirect way of retaining your length, if you may. If you want your hair to retain its length, ensure that the ends are healthy and you don't have those split ends and single strand knots tagging and snagging your hair, keeping it short. Another great advantage of trimming your hair, which I've already discussed, I guess, is it gets rid of those single strand knots and split ends, right? So keeping your ends healthy. However, the upside of that in another way, or another way to look at it, is that it actually helps detangling your hair become easier. You guys know, if you keep split ends and if you keep single strand knots at those ends, detangling can be a nightmare. It takes longer, it's more tedious, it's more frustrating, and of course, you endure more breakage. So these are some of the things or some of the advantages or benefits of trimming your hair. Now, a lot of people will say to you, trim on a schedule. I used to trim on a schedule, all right, but I don't. These days, I don't. I try to really get into the habit of assessing my hair, understanding where I'm at, looking at my hair, feeling my hair, seeing, do I need a trim, do I not? Because if you just do it on a schedule, I find that sometimes you end up trimming unnecessary length. However, if you get into the habit of actually feeling and touching and assessing your hair, you ensure that you're actually trimming your hair when a trim is needed, if you know what I mean. And in turn, you actually retain as much length as you can. Now, if you're someone that might forget, or you think that you might neglect your hair or just forget about trims altogether, then a schedule might work for you. However, for me, I don't necessarily trim on a schedule. At the moment, I'm trying to work myself up to trimming my hair once a year. But this year I have trimmed it 3 times simply because I was trying to get rid of that damage, as I discussed earlier on in this video. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you found it helpful. I ended up taking about a week to trim my hair, which works for me and my lifestyle. I used a lot of wigs, headbands, head wraps to look copacetic to the world, and that was that. I'll see you next time.